I want to take just a minute to talk about some of the problems that can arise with a butcher block. The first, and maybe the biggest of these, is warping. Warping occurs when moisture hits one side or one face of the board more than the other. And what happens is water penetrates typically on the top of the board where it's used, where it's washed, and it causes the wood fibers on that top face to swell. When they swell, it creates a warp or a crown, typically in the center of the board. So the good news is there's generally a good solution for this. All you need to do is take the concave side, which is again often the bottom side of the board, run that under the sink for maybe 5-10 seconds, and then let that board dry on edge on your countertop. And as often as not, within minutes, that board will completely flatten out. If it doesn't quite flatten out, try it again, 5-10 seconds just on the underside of the block. Let it dry and see if it has. Once it gets flat, then just oil the heck out of both faces of the board, apply a lot of board butter to both faces of the board, and you should be protected from there. A second issue that can happen is micro cracking. This is really exclusively in maple. It doesn't happen as often in cherry or in walnut. And this occurs normally in winter months when it's really dry. And what'll happen is the wood fibers, right perpendicular to some of the wood grain in the maple, these really small hairline cracks will open up. The best way to deal with that is just oil the butcher block really well. And as often as not, in the spring months or the summer months, they'll close right back up and disappear. So it's not something to be concerned about unless that crack really expands and turns into something that splits the board, which in my experience, and it's considerable experience, almost never happens. So just be patient, let time happen, oil the board well, and those cracks should go away. A third thing to think about is odors. Oftentimes, if you chop garlic or mince onions on a butcher block, some of those smells can penetrate into the wood fibers of the block. The good news is there's a very easy solution for this. I would love to take credit for it, but our friends at Cooks Illustrated is where I first heard of it. And you simply take a slice of apple or potato, either one, whichever you have readily available, raw apple, raw potato, and you just wipe it all over the butcher block. And there's a chemical reaction that occurs from the apple or the potato that it literally just pulls the odors out. So the best way to deal with smells is exactly that. Just wipe it with the potato or the apple. Stains can be a little bit more challenging. In general, I would discourage you from cutting dark berries or beets on a butcher block. Particularly in maple, again, those stains can penetrate and they can be really difficult to get out. I would be cautious about using hydrogen peroxide or baking soda or some of the chemical processes. Don't use bleach either on a butcher block, as those can actually discolor the block more than just leaving it alone. Stains will dissipate over time, so you should be fine just with a little bit of patience there. Finally, I want to talk just a minute about blemishes and knots. Wood is organic. It is not a plastic cutting board. And in spite of the fact that we buy the most expensive, highest grade wood that money can buy, there will oftentimes be knots, discolorations, small little voids, things like that, idiosyncrasies in the wood. And every wood species has its own idiosyncrasies. Maples will differ from walnut, which will differ from cherry. So it's really important that our expectations be managed here. I want every butcher block we make to be beautiful. And by and large, they are. But I'm not going to throw away a butcher block if the maple has, a slightly dark spot in it in one spot or the other. Or if a cherry butcher block has a tiny void that we've filled with a piece of epoxy. That's just the reality of dealing with an organic material. And I hope that you as a customer will choose to sort of celebrate the uniqueness of every butcher block that we make.